are listening to The Forest's Last Hope. Book 3 of 7 in the Iron Rule collection. Akumah Audiobooks. Chapter 1, The Village of Pinehollow. The village of Pinehollow is a quaint haven, nestled amidst a sprawling, ancient forest. Towering trees, their branches reaching towards the heavens, cast long shadows that danced in the gentle breeze. The villagers, a simple folks, lived in harmony with the natural world, their lives dictated by the rhythms of the seasons. Talia, a young girl with a heart full of wonder, was drawn to the forest's mysterious allure. While others feared its depths, she found solace in its embrace. She would spend hours exploring its fringes, her eyes wide with curiosity as she observed the intricate dance of life within its heart. On this particular day, the sun cast a warm glow over the village, inviting exploration. Talia ventured towards the forest's edge, where the well-worn path abruptly ended. A silent barrier, it seemed, separating the known from the unknown. The villagers, though respectful of the forest's power, maintained a cautious distance, whispering tales of ancient spirits and hidden dangers that lurked within its depths. Talia's mother, like many villagers, had always warned her about the forest's secrets. "Child, the woods are alive," she would say, her voice filled with a mix of reverence and caution. "They watch over us, but they also protect their mysteries." But Talia, with her insatiable curiosity, couldn't resist the forest's allure. As she approached the edge of the woods, she spotted Sara, the village's wise old herbalist. Kneeling amidst a vibrant tapestry of wildflowers, Sara's silver hair glistened in the fading sunlight. Talia had always been drawn to Sara's profound connection with nature. There was an ancient wisdom in her eyes, a knowing that seemed to transcend the boundaries of human understanding. "Good evening, Sara," Talia greeted the older woman, her voice soft. Sara looked up, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "Ah, Talia. Out for another stroll through the ancient woods, I see?" Talia nodded, her gaze drawn to the darkening canopy. "I find solace there. A sense of belonging, perhaps." A knowing glint flickered in Sara's eyes. The forest has a way of drawing those who are attuned to its whispers. But remember, child, the trees are not always kind. They may welcome the pure of heart, but they are unforgiving to those who trespass on their secrets. Talia's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" she asked, a shiver running down her spine. Sara paused, her gaze fixed on the ancient trees. "There are forces in this world, Talia, older than time itself. Some are benevolent guardians, while others are shrouded in mystery." A chill wind swept through the clearing, and Talia shivered, not from the cold, but from a sense of unease. She had always felt a strange connection to the forest, but Sara's words painted a picture far more ominous. "I'll be cautious," she promised, her voice barely a whisper. Sara's smile was fleeting, replaced by a look of profound wisdom. "See that you do." With a heavy heart, Talia turned and stepped into the emerald embrace of the woods. The canopy overhead filtered the sunlight, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. The sounds of the village faded into the distance, replaced by the soft rustling of leaves and the distant call of unseen creatures. Here, in the heart of the ancient forest, Talia felt a sense of both peace and peril. She ventured deeper into the woods, drawn by an inexplicable pull. The trees grew older and more gnarled, their roots twisting like skeletal fingers into the earth. A low, rhythmic hum filled the air, a heartbeat of the forest, pulsing beneath her feet. Then, she saw it. A colossal tree, its silver bark shimmering in the twilight, stood at the heart of a secluded clearing. Its branches, like ancient, gnarled hands, reached towards the heavens. The tree exuded an aura of power, a living, breathing entity. Talia felt a surge of awe and trepidation as she approached. "The Heartwood," she breathed, recalling the whispered tales of the villagers. This was the heart of the forest, a repository of ancient wisdom and power. Drawn by an unseen force, she approached the ancient tree, her fingers tracing the rough bark. A surge of energy pulsed through her, as if the forest itself was whispering secrets. Glimpses of the past, present, and future flickered before her mind's eye, a testament to the tree's enduring spirit. Yet, this tranquil moment was shattered by a low, ominous rumble. Talia's heart pounded as she whirled around, her gaze fixed on the shadows at the clearing's edge. A cloaked figure emerged, its face obscured by a dark hood. The man exuded an aura of menace, a stark contrast to the serene forest. She had never encountered such a sinister presence. The man advanced, his gaze fixed on the Heartwood, a sinister glint in his eyes. "So, the legends were true," he hissed, his voice a chilling whisper. Talia recoiled, her heart pounding like a drum. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice barely a squeak. Ignoring her question, the man raised a hand, dark energy swirling at his fingertips. "It does not matter who I am. What matters is the tree's power, and how I shall wield it." Terror gripped Talia as the man lunged towards the Heartwood. The ancient tree groaned under the assault of dark magic, the air crackling with tension. Just as despair threatened to consume her, a voice, ancient and resonant as the forest itself, echoed in her mind. "Protect the Heartwood, Talia. You are its guardian." Emboldened by this mysterious voice, Talia stepped between the man and the tree. A surge of power coursed through her, a gift from the forest. "You won't harm it," she declared, her voice steady despite the fear that gnawed at her. The man's eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint in his gaze. "You cannot stop me," he sneered. As the man raised his hand, the earth beneath him rumbled. Roots erupted from the ground, binding his limbs and dragging him back into the shadowy depths of the forest. He struggled against the unseen force, but the forest's power was too great. Talia stood motionless, her heart pounding in her chest. A hush fell over the clearing, broken only by the soft rustling of leaves. Slowly, she turned to face the Heartwood, its glow dimming as the sun began to set. "You are the guardian," the voice echoed, a gentle whisper in her mind. Talia was bewildered, unsure of what had just transpired. Yet, one thing was certain, the forest had chosen her. And whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them, ready to fulfill her newfound role. Akumah Audiobooks. You are listening to The Forest's Last Hope. Book 3 of 7 in the Iron Rule collection. Akumah Audiobooks. Chapter 2, Shadows of Darkness. The days that followed were a blur. The forest, once a place of solace, now pulsed with a strange energy, a hum beneath the surface. The encounter with the cloaked man, the ancient voice, the surge of power, it all felt like a dream, a fevered vision. Yet, the mark it left on her was undeniable. She was the guardian, a title both daunting and exhilarating. She couldn't confide in anyone, not even her mother. Bumi, with her constant warnings about the deeper woods, would dismiss her tale as a girl's fanciful notion. Talia was alone, a solitary sentinel guarding an ancient secret. One morning, as she sat lost in thought over breakfast, a knock interrupted the quiet. Her mother answered the door, revealing Sara, her neighbor, her face etched with concern. "Sara," Bumi greeted her, a hint of surprise in her voice. "What brings you here so early?" Sara's expression was grave. "I need to speak with Talia," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Talia's heart pounded in her chest. Sara had been distant since the incident in the forest, but she hadn't shared the secret. Could she somehow know? Bumi, sensing the tension, invited Sara inside. As the door closed behind them, Talia couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. Sara, her long gray cloak swirling around her, led Talia to the edge of the village. They paused at the edge of a small grove, a secluded spot shielded from prying eyes. "I know what happened in the forest," Sara began, her voice a hushed whisper. Talia's eyes widened in astonishment. "How?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "I've lived here long enough to feel the pulse of the forest. When something disrupts the balance, it speaks to me," Sara explained, her gaze piercing Talia's. "The Heartwood chose you, didn't it?" Talia nodded, her heart pounding. "Yes, but I don't understand why. I'm just an ordinary girl. I don't know how to protect it." Sara's hand rested on Talia's shoulder, a comforting weight. "The forest doesn't." She said, her voice steady. "If it chose you, it's because you possess the strength and spirit to protect it." But beware, for Garin, the man you encountered, is a dangerous foe. He's returned to Pinehollow, armed with dark magic, with his eyes set on the Heartwood's power. Talia's mind raced. The name Garin stirred a distant memory, a whispered tale from the village elders. Sara's expression turned somber. He was once one of us, but his greed led him astray. He left years ago, seeking power and wealth in distant lands. Now, he returns, corrupted by dark magic. Such power, when misused, can wreak havoc, destroying the balance of the forest and the village. Talia's heart pounded. Why does he want the Heartwood? She asked, her voice trembling. Sara's gaze grew troubled. The Heartwood is the lifeblood of the forest, a source of ancient power. In the wrong hands, it can be a weapon, capable of great destruction. Garin seeks to harness that power for his own nefarious purposes, threatening the very existence of our home. A shiver ran down Talia's spine. How can I stop him? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. I don't even know how to use the magic within me. Sara smiled, a sad smile. You will learn, in time. The Heartwood chose you for a reason, and I'm here to guide you. But be cautious. Garin has dark allies, and they'll stop at nothing to achieve their goal. You cannot confront him directly yet. Talia's fists clenched. The thought of Garin destroying the forest filled her with dread. The idea of facing him, a being of immense dark power, was terrifying. Sara, sensing her fear, placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Talia. It's acting despite it. You must do what's right, even if it scares you. Talia nodded, but doubt lingered. How could she protect the Heartwood if she didn't understand the magic it had bestowed upon her? She felt a deep connection to the forest, but harnessing its power remained a mystery. As they walked back, a sense of unease settled over the village. The villagers, usually so carefree, now moved with a cautious step, their eyes darting towards the forest. The once vibrant fields were now a sickly shade of yellow, the animals restless and agitated. The forest, the lifeblood of the village, was ailing. Sara, what's happening? Talia asked, her voice barely a whisper. Sara's face mirrored her concern. Garin's influence is spreading. The forest, the lifeblood of our village, is reacting to the darkness. The crops wither, the animals fear. It's as if the very land itself is under siege. Talia's heart ached. The village, dependent on the forest's bounty, was on the brink. If Garin's grip tightened, the consequences would be dire. As they approached the village square, a crowd had gathered, their faces etched with worry. At the center stood a tall, cloaked figure, his face hidden in shadow. Yet, Talia recognized the glint in his eyes, a chilling reminder of the darkness he embodied. It was Garin. Garin's voice, smooth and persuasive, echoed through the square. I have returned to Pinehollow to usher in a new era of prosperity. For too long, we've been shackled by the forest's whims. But I have found a way to harness its power, to bend it to our will. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some faces, once filled with doubt, now held a glimmer of hope. Garin's words, laced with dark magic, were subtly influencing their minds. Talia clenched her fists, her heart pounding. She yearned to expose Garin's true intentions, to warn the villagers of the impending doom. But Sara's restraining hand halted her impulsive action. Not yet, Sara whispered, her voice barely audible. His spell is strong. If you confront him now, you'll only draw attention to yourself, and you're not ready. Garin continued his deceptive speech, his voice growing more confident. I understand your fears. The forest, with its mysteries and dangers, has cast a shadow over our lives. But with my guidance, we can harness its power for our benefit. Trust me. As Garin's words washed over the crowd, a growing number of villagers began to succumb to his influence. Their faces, once filled with skepticism, now wore a mask of blind faith. Talia knew she had to act, and soon. The fate of the forest, and perhaps the village itself, hung in the balance. Talia's heart pounded in her chest. She couldn't stand idly by while Garin's influence spread like a blight. Yet, Sara's warning echoed in her mind. Rushing into action would only put herself and the village in greater danger. Garin was playing a long, insidious game, and she needed to be patient and strategic. As the crowd dispersed, Garin's eyes met hers, a cold, calculating glint in them. A shiver ran down her spine. She knew he was aware of her presence, and she feared what he might do next. Once the square was empty, Sara turned to Talia. "This is just the beginning," she said gravely. "He's sowing seeds of doubt and fear, manipulating their minds to turn against the forest. But they can't believe him," Talia exclaimed, her voice filled with frustration. "He's a danger to us all." Sara's expression softened. "People are easily swayed by fear, Talia. That's how Garin operates. He exploits their vulnerabilities. To defeat him, you must be stronger than his fear and deception." Talia felt the weight of her responsibility, a heavy burden on her young shoulders. She was not just protecting the Heartwood, but the very soul of her village. The thought of Garin wielding the forest's power for his own nefarious ends filled her with dread. Yet, she refused to succumb to fear. "I'll do whatever it takes," she vowed, her voice resolute. Sara's expression softened, a flicker of pride in her eyes. "Then we have much to do. The true battle is yet to come." As Talia walked home, the forest loomed large, its ancient power stirring within her. Garin's words echoed in her mind, a chilling reminder of the danger that lurked. But so did the voice of the Heartwood, a whisper of hope and destiny. "You are the guardian." Talia was uncertain, unprepared. Yet, she knew she had no choice. The forest had chosen her, and now, she must rise to the challenge, shielding it from the encroaching darkness. Akumah Audiobooks. You are listening to The Forest's Last Hope. Book 3 of 7 in the Iron Rule collection. Akumah Audiobooks. Chapter 3, Whispers in the Shadows. The forest, once a place of solace, now hummed with a strange energy. It was as if the very trees were holding their breath, their ancient power steering beneath the bark. Talia, drawn by an unseen force, sought solace in the Heartwood's embrace. As her fingers touched the rough bark, a surge of energy pulsed through her, a comforting warmth spreading through her veins. The Heartwood, a silent sentinel, seemed to acknowledge her presence, its ancient wisdom echoing in her mind. "You must learn to harness your power, child," a voice, soft yet profound, whispered. "The fate of the forest, and perhaps the world, rests in your hands." Talia closed her eyes, her mind racing. She knew she had to be stronger, wiser. She had to learn to control the magic within her, to protect the Heartwood and the village from Garin's malevolent influence. "You must be stronger," the voice of the forest whispered in her mind, barely audible but clear enough to send a shiver down her spine. Talia sighed, pressing her forehead against the tree. "But how?" she whispered back. "I don't know how to control the magic inside me." The forest remained silent, offering no more answers. Talia's frustration built inside her. The burden of being the guardian was more than she could handle alone. And worse, she didn't know who to trust. Sara had helped her understand the importance of the Heartwood, but she didn't have the power to teach Talia how to control her newfound abilities. The villagers, many of them, seemed to be falling under Garin's spell of persuasion. They were already beginning to doubt the old ways, doubting the forest's magic. Talia had never felt more alone. As she stood there, a sudden rustle in the underbrush snapped her out of her thoughts. She spun around, her heart pounding, and saw movement in the shadows. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling slightly. A figure emerged from the shadows, a young man with a lean frame and piercing eyes. His voice, soft and reassuring, cut through the night. "Don't be afraid," he said, his hands raised in a peaceful gesture. "I mean no harm." Talia, her heart pounding, stepped back. "Don't be afraid," he said softly, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm not here to hurt you." Talia narrowed her eyes, taking a step back. "Who are you? And why are you sneaking around the forest in the middle of the night?" The young man paused, his expression unreadable. My name is Sonu. Well, let's just say I've been watching you. Talia's heartbeat quickened. Watching me? Why? I've been keeping an eye on things in Pinehollow, Sonu explained, glancing around the clearing. I know about Garin. And I know about Heartwood. His gaze shifted to the shimmering tree behind her. I know you're the guardian. Talia felt a jolt of surprise. How do you know that? I've been tracking Garin for a long time, Sonu said, his voice grave. I'm not from these parts. I've seen the devastation he's capable of in other lands. He's a threat, Talia, a far greater threat than you can imagine. Talia, her mind reeling, stared at him. Garin's past actions, his ambitions to seize power beyond Pinehollow, filled her with dread. Why are you telling me this? She asked, her voice cautious. Sonu stepped closer, his gaze intense. You need help. You can't face Garin alone, not with his dark magic. If he controls the Heartwood, it will unleash chaos, not just in the forest, but across the land. Talia hesitated, a flicker of hope and doubt warring within her. Sonu's words, while unsettling, offered a glimmer of hope. Yet, his intensity made her wary. Why do you care about the Heartwood? She asked, her voice sharp. Sonu's expression turned somber. My reasons are complex, but our goal is the same, to protect the Heartwood. Together, we might stand a chance. Talia weighed her options. Sonu was a stranger, yet he possessed knowledge she desperately needed. Trusting him was a risk, but the stakes were too high to ignore. Perhaps, together, they could defeat Garin and safeguard the future of the forest, and the village. Very well, she agreed, a flicker of determination in her eyes. But you must tell me everything you know about Garin. I need to understand the true extent of the threat we face. Sonu nodded solemnly. Garin's power is growing, and I fear he's planning something significant. We must act swiftly. Talia's heart sank. The first pinch of true danger settled in her chest. It wasn't just a matter of waiting for Garin to make a move. He was already planning something, and time was running out. They sat by the crackling fire, the flickering light casting eerie shadows on their faces. Sonu, his eyes distant, began to speak. Garin wasn't always like this. Once, he was just an ordinary man, living a simple life. But then, he stumbled upon a dark power, a corrupting force that twisted his soul. It gave him power, but at a terrible cost. He's been traveling from village to village, using his newfound power to manipulate and control. Talia's heart pounded. Why does he want the Heartwood? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. The Heartwood, Sonu explained, is a wellspring of ancient, pure magic. It's a power source beyond imagination. If Garin controls it, he'll become unstoppable. The Heartwood's energy will amplify his dark magic, making him a force of unimaginable evil. Talia shuddered. But why would he destroy the forest? She asked, her voice filled with disbelief. Sonu's eyes held a grim determination. Garin cares nothing for the balance of nature. To him, magic is a tool, a means to an end. He sees no value in the forest, in the life it sustains. All he desires is power, and he will destroy anything that stands in his way. Talia's anger burned hot. The thought of Garin corrupting the Heartwood's power filled her with rage. She wouldn't let him. We must stop him, she declared, her voice resolute. Sonu nodded, his gaze unwavering. We must act swiftly. Garin is nearing the completion of a ritual that will bind the Heartwood's power to his own. Once he succeeds, it will be too late. Talia's heart pounded with dread. What must we do? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. We must sever his connection to the source of his dark power, Sonu explained. Weaken him, make him vulnerable. But it won't be easy. Garin is surrounded by followers, loyal to his cause. And his ritual is heavily guarded. Talia's heart pounded in her chest. The stakes were higher than she had ever imagined. Garin was a threat not just to the forest, but to the very fabric of reality. She couldn't allow him to succeed. "We'll stop him," she vowed, her voice unwavering. "No matter the cost." Sonu's expression was a mix of admiration and concern. "You'll need to be cautious, Talia. Garin's magic is powerful and dangerous. The closer we get to him, the greater the risk." Talia nodded, her determination resolute. "I'm ready." Yet, as she gazed into the flickering flames, a wave of doubt washed over her. The path ahead was perilous, filled with unknown dangers. She was unprepared, a mere mortal facing a force of unimaginable darkness. Akumah Audiobooks. You are listening to The Forest's Last Hope. Book 3 of 7 in the Iron Rule collection. Akumah Audiobooks. Chapter 4, The Crossroads. The next morning, Talia woke to a strange stillness. The usual sounds of the village, birds chirping, children playing, the murmur of conversation, were muted, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Talia knew that she could no longer wait for something to happen. The time for hesitation had passed. She needed to act. She quickly gathered her things, her hands trembling slightly as she prepared for the day. The conversation with Sonu the night before had shaken her. She had thought that Garin was a threat, but now she knew just how deep his power ran, and how much danger they were all in. As she stepped outside, she saw Sonu waiting for her at the edge of the village. He was leaning against a tree, his arms crossed, his eyes scanning the horizon. He seemed calm, but Talia could sense the tension beneath the surface. He was just as aware as she was of the gravity of the situation. "Ready?" he asked when she approached. Talia nodded, though inside, she was anything but ready. "Where do we start?" "We must find the source of his power," Sonu said, his voice low. "It's a perilous task, his followers are everywhere, and his magic grows stronger by the day." Talia's heart pounded. She had witnessed the subtle influence of Garin's magic on the villagers, their minds clouded by doubt and fear. Garin's power was insidious, seeping into the very fabric of their lives. "How do we find this source?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Sonu's gaze met hers, a flicker of determination in his eyes. "We start with his followers. By infiltrating their gatherings, we might trace the magic back to its origin. But we must be cautious, for they are watchful and loyal. One wrong move, and we'll alert Garin." Talia nodded, a sense of resolve growing within her. The weight of her responsibility as the guardian was heavy, but she would not falter. The fate of the forest, and perhaps the world, depended on her. They moved cautiously through the shadows, the village's watchful eyes upon them. The tension was palpable, a silent understanding that something was amiss. As they reached the forest's edge, Sonu gestured towards a secluded clearing. "This is where they gather," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "We must approach with caution." They crept through the undergrowth, the rustling leaves a constant threat to their concealment. The flickering fire in the clearing cast an eerie glow, illuminating the faces of Garin's followers. Talia recognized some of them, once familiar faces now twisted by the darkness. "They seem ordinary," Talia whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. "I expected them to be different." Sonu's smile was grim. "That's the insidious nature of dark magic. It creeps in subtly, corrupting minds without a trace. By the time they realize what's happened, it's too late." Talia shuddered, watching as the group spoke in low voices. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but the way they moved, the way they leaned in close to one another, made it clear that they were planning something. "We need to find out what they're up to," Sonu whispered, his eyes narrowing as he watched the group. "But we can't get too close, or we'll risk being seen." Talia nodded, her mind racing. There had to be a way to eavesdrop without revealing themselves. She looked around, searching for anything that could help. Then she spotted it, a small ridge overlooking the clearing. It was just high enough to give them a better vantage point, without drawing too much attention. "Up there," she whispered, pointing to the ridge. Sonu followed her gaze and nodded. "Good idea. Let's move." They climbed the ridge as quietly as they could, careful not to disturb the loose rocks and fallen leaves. When they reached the top, they had a clear view of the group below. Talia strained to hear their conversation, her heart pounding in her chest. Garin said it's almost time, one of the men was saying, his voice low and conspiratorial. The ritual will be completed soon. Once the Heartwood is under his control, nothing will be able to stop us. Talia's blood ran cold. The ritual. Garin was closer to completing it than they had thought. We need to act fast, Sonu whispered, his expression grim. If Garin finishes the ritual, it'll be too late to stop him. We have to find the source of his power before that happens. Talia nodded, her heart racing. But as she watched the group below, she felt a surge of doubt. How were they supposed to stop someone as powerful as Garin? She didn't even know how to use the magic inside her. And Sonu, for all his knowledge and experience, couldn't face Garin alone. For the first time since she had been chosen by the Heartwood, Talia felt the full weight of her fear. What if she wasn't strong enough? What if she failed? But then she remembered Sarah's words, courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means doing what's right, even when you are. Talia took a deep breath, steadying herself. She didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing, she couldn't let Garin succeed. She had been chosen for a reason, and now, she had to prove herself worthy of that responsibility. As the group below continued their conversation, Sonu motioned for her to retreat. They quietly made their way back down the ridge, moving deeper into the forest. We need a new plan, Sonu said once they were out of earshot. Garin's magic is tied to something dark, something he's found outside of the village. If we can find where he's drawing his power from, we might be able to disrupt the ritual. Talia frowned, her mind racing. Do you think it's connected to the forest? Sonu hesitated, then nodded slowly. It's possible. The Heartwood's magic is intertwined with the land, but dark magic can twist those connections. Garin might be using something in the forest to fuel his power. Talia's stomach churned. The idea of dark magic corrupting the forest, the place she had always felt most at home, was almost too much to bear. But she couldn't afford to be paralyzed by fear. If Garin was using the forest to strengthen his magic, they had to stop him. We'll need to explore the deeper parts of the woods, Sonu continued, his expression serious. The places where the magic is strongest. If Garin is drawing power from the forest, that's where we'll find it. Talia nodded, her resolve hardening. She had always been drawn to the deeper parts of the woods, but her mother had warned her to stay away. Now, she had no choice but to venture into the unknown. They spent the next few hours preparing for the journey. Sonu gathered supplies, food, water, and a few small charms he had brought with him to protect against dark magic. Talia packed what little she had, her mind focused on the task ahead. As they prepared to leave the village behind, Talia couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. Pinehollow had always been her home, a place of peace and comfort. But now, it was a village under siege, its people slowly falling under the spell of a dark force they couldn't even see. We'll come back, Sonu said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. But we have to act now, before it's too late. Talia nodded, though her heart ached. She didn't know what awaited them in the depths of the forest, but she knew that this was their only chance. If they failed, Garin would take control of the Heartwood, and the village would be lost. The deeper they ventured, the more the forest seemed to writhe, its ancient power reacting to the encroaching darkness. The air was thick with tension, a palpable sense of unease hanging heavy in the air. Sonu, his eyes sharp and alert, led the way, his every move calculated and precise. As they neared their destination, the air crackled with a sinister energy. A large, ancient stone altar, etched with arcane symbols, stood at the clearing's heart. Dark magic pulsed from the altar, a chilling reminder of the power it held. The surrounding area was eerily silent, devoid of life. This is it, Sonu whispered, his voice barely audible. The source of Garin's power. Talia's heart pounded in her chest. The dark energy was overwhelming, a suffocating presence that threatened to consume her. Yet, she stood her ground, her hand clutching the pendant, a symbol of the Heartwood's protective power. We need to destroy it, Sonu said, his voice tense. If we can break the connection between Garin and this source of magic, it will weaken him. But it won't be easy. The magic here is ancient and strong. Talia nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She had never felt more out of her depth. But there was no turning back now. This was the moment they had been working toward, the crossroads where everything would be decided. If they failed, Garin would complete his ritual, and all would be lost. Sonu moved cautiously into the clearing, and Talia followed, her every sense on high alert. The air grew colder the closer they got to the altar, the magic pulsing like a heartbeat beneath the earth. Sonu knelt by the altar, examining the symbols. These runes, they're part of the binding spell, Sonu muttered. They're what's anchoring Garin's power to this place. If we can disrupt them, we might be able to sever the connection. Talia looked at the runes, feeling the dark energy swirling around them. She could sense the malevolence embedded in the symbols, like a poison coursing through the earth. How do we disrupt them? She asked. Sonu pulled a small vial from his bag. This is a mixture of herbs and enchanted water. It's weak compared to Garin's magic, but it should be enough to disrupt the spell temporarily, long enough for us to break the connection. Talia watched as Sonu began carefully pouring the mixture over the runes. The liquid sizzled as it touched the stone, and a faint wisp of smoke rose from the altar. The air around them seemed to tremble, the magic in the clearing growing agitated. But as Sonu worked, a sudden chill ran down Talia's spine. She turned, her eyes scanning the shadows at the edge of the clearing. Something was wrong. She could feel it, a presence, watching them from the darkness. Sonu, she whispered, her voice tight. We're not alone. Sonu froze, his eyes darting to the tree line. Garin's followers, he muttered. They must have sensed what we're doing. A figure stepped out of the shadows, followed by several more. Talia's heart dropped as she recognized them as villagers, people she had grown up with. But their eyes were glazed, their expressions blank, as if they were no longer in control of themselves. They're under his spell, Sonu said, standing up slowly. We need to finish this, now. Talia's mind raced. They couldn't fight the villagers, these were people they knew, people who had been corrupted by Garin's magic. But they couldn't let them stop the ritual either. Time was running out. I'll distract them, Talia said, her voice shaking slightly. You finish disrupting the spell. Sonu hesitated. Are you sure? Talia nodded, though fear gripped her heart. I can handle it. Just hurry. Sonu gave her a tight nod, then turned back to the altar, working faster now as he poured the last of the mixture over the runes. Talia stepped forward, placing herself between Sonu and the approaching villagers. The villagers moved slowly, their eyes fixed on her with eerie intensity. Talia's pulse raced, her hands trembling as she tried to think of what to do. She didn't want to hurt them, but if they attacked, she wouldn't have a choice. Stay back, she called, her voice firm despite her fear. You don't have to do this. Garin is controlling you. You can fight it. But the villagers didn't respond. They kept moving toward her, their blank expressions unchanged. Talia's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the magic inside her stirring, the connection to the Heartwood pulsing faintly beneath her skin. Trust the forest, Sara's words echoed in her mind. Talia took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment as she reached out to the magic of the forest, the magic that had chosen her. She could feel it now, clearer than ever before. It wasn't just power, it was life, the very essence of the forest, of the trees, the earth, the wind. With a surge of determination, Talia called on that magic, letting it flow through her. The air around her shifted, a soft breeze picking up as the trees seemed to bend toward her, their branches swaying gently. The villagers hesitated, their movements faltering as the breeze swept over them. Talia's eyes snapped open, and she stepped forward, her voice strong. This isn't who you are. The forest is with me, and it's with you too. You can fight this. For a moment, the villagers wavered, their eyes flickering with uncertainty. But then, as if in response to Talia's defiance, a dark energy pulsed through the clearing, and the villagers stiffened. They began to advance again, their eyes glowing faintly with Garin's magic. Talia's heart sank. The forest's magic was strong, but Garin's control over his followers was stronger. She needed more time, just a little more time for Sonu to finish. But the villagers were closing in, and Talia could feel her grip on the magic slipping. She couldn't fight them all. Not alone. Just as she was about to give in to panic, a voice called out from the trees. Talia. Talia spun around, her heart leaping with relief as Sara emerged from the shadows, her staff glowing with a soft, green light. Behind her, several other villagers, those who had resisted Garin's influence, followed, their faces determined. Sara. Talia gasped. We're with you, Sara said, stepping forward to stand beside Talia. We won't let Garin win. With a nod, Sara raised her staff, and the green light intensified, spreading out across the clearing like a wave. The villagers under Garin's control faltered again, their movements slowing as the light washed over them. Now, Talia, Sara said quietly. Use the Heartwood's magic. Talia closed her eyes, focusing all her energy on the connection she felt to the forest. She could feel the Heartwood's power flowing through her, the ancient magic of the land surging up from the earth beneath her feet. With a deep breath, Talia released that magic, sending it out in a wave of light that radiated through the clearing. The villagers stopped in their tracks, their eyes losing the faint glow of Garin's influence. One by one, they blinked, as if waking from a long sleep. What happened? One of them muttered, looking around in confusion. Talia's heart raced as she realized that it had worked. The magic of the Heartwood had broken Garin's hold on them. Behind her, Sonu stepped away from the altar, his expression triumphant. It's done. The connection is broken. Talia turned to look at him, relief flooding her. But before she could say anything, a cold, dark voice echoed through the clearing. You think you've won? Talia's blood ran cold. She spun around, her eyes widening as Garin himself stepped out of the shadows, his eyes blazing with fury. You may have disrupted the ritual, Garin snarled, his voice dripping with malice. But you cannot stop me. The Heartwood's magic will be mine. The dark energy around Garin intensified, swirling around him like a storm. Talia's heart pounded in her chest. They had weakened him by breaking the connection to the altar, but he was still powerful, far more powerful than she had realized. Garin raised his hand, and a bolt of dark energy shot toward Talia. She barely had time to react, throwing up her hands in a desperate attempt to shield herself. The energy struck her, sending her tumbling backward, pain searing through her body. Talia. Sonu shouted, rushing to her side. Talia struggled to get to her feet, her vision swimming. Garin was advancing on them, his eyes burning with hatred. We need to get out of here, Sonu muttered, helping her up. But Talia shook her head, her jaw clenched. She couldn't run. Not now. Not when they were so close. With a surge of determination, Talia pushed Sonu away gently. I won't run, she said, her voice steady despite the pain. This is my fight. Sonu stared at her, his expression conflicted. But before he could respond, Talia turned to face Garin, her hands glowing faintly with the magic of the Heartwood. You will not take the Heartwood, Talia said, her voice firm, though her body still trembled from the pain of Garin's attack. This forest will never belong to you. Garin laughed darkly, the sound echoing through the clearing. You think you can stop me, little guardian? You've only just begun to tap into your power. You're no match for me. Talia's heart raced, but she stood her ground. Behind her, she could feel the presence of Sara, Sonu, and the villagers who had come to help. She wasn't alone. The Heartwood's magic flowed through all of them, through the trees, the earth, the very air around them. She had to trust that this ancient power would be enough. Garin raised his hand again, dark energy swirling at his fingertips, preparing to strike. But this time, Talia was ready. She closed her eyes, reaching deep within herself, to the connection she felt to the Heartwood. The magic surged up through her, stronger now, more confident. The trees around them seemed to come alive, their branches reaching out as if to protect Talia and the others. The ground beneath her feet rumbled, and the air grew thick with the scent of pine and earth. Talia opened her eyes, and a soft, green light radiated from her hands. "You underestimate the forest," Talia said quietly. "The Heartwood's magic isn't mine, it belongs to the land, to the people, to all of us. And together, we are stronger than you." With a shout, Talia thrust her hands forward, sending a wave of green light toward Garin. The light collided with his dark energy, the two forces battling for dominance. For a moment, it seemed as though Garin's power would overwhelm hers, but then, something shifted. The villagers, those who had been freed from Garin's control, stepped forward, their hands raised, their voices calling out in unison. Sara's staff glowed brighter, and Sonu unsheathed his sword, standing beside Talia as the forest itself seemed to join in the battle. The ground trembled, and the trees swayed, their branches reaching out to ensnare Garin. The dark energy around him faltered, and Talia could feel the Heartwood's magic growing stronger, pushing back against the corruption. "No." Garin snarled, his eyes wide with fury. "This can't be happening." Talia could see the fear in his eyes now, the realization that he was losing. The dark magic that had once given him so much power was crumbling under the weight of the Heartwood's ancient magic, the power of life itself. With one final push, Talia released all the magic she had been holding back. The green light exploded outward, enveloping Garin in a brilliant flash. The force of it knocked him back, and for a moment, he disappeared into the swirling energy. When the light faded, Garin lay crumpled on the ground, his dark magic extinguished. The clearing was silent once more, but this time, it was a peaceful silence. The oppressive weight of Garin's power was gone, replaced by the gentle hum of the forest, the heartbeat of the land. Talia took a deep, shaky breath, her body trembling with exhaustion. She could feel the magic of the Heartwood retreating now, settling back into the earth, its job done for the moment. She had done it. They had done it. Sonu stepped forward, his hand resting on Talia's shoulder. "You did it," he said quietly, a small smile on his face. Talia nodded, her heart swelling with relief. But she knew that this was only the beginning. The Heartwood was safe for now, but there would always be others like Garin, seeking to control its magic for their own gain. She still had much to learn, much to protect. Sara approached, her eyes shining with pride. "You've proven yourself, Talia. The Heartwood choose wisely." Talia smiled, though her exhaustion weighed heavily on her. "I couldn't have done it without all of you. The forest, it's not just mine to protect. It belongs to all of us." Sara nodded. "And as long as we stand together, the Heartwood will remain strong." The villagers, now free from Garin's influence, gathered around Talia, their faces filled with gratitude. They had been through so much, but together, they had overcome the darkness. The forest had protected them, and in return, they would protect the forest. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the clearing, Talia looked out at the trees, feeling the deep connection she had to the land, to the magic that flowed through it. She wasn't just a guardian, she was part of something much greater, something ancient and powerful. Akumah Audiobooks. You are listening to The Forest's Last Hope. Book 3 of 7 in the Iron Rule collection. Akumah Audiobooks. Chapter 5, Confronting the Abyss. The sun dipped below the forest canopy, casting long, eerie shadows across Pinehollow. Though the immediate threat of Garin had been neutralized, a lingering sense of unease hung heavy in the air. The ancient evil, once unleashed, left its mark, a reminder of the darkness that could consume even the most idyllic of places. Sonu, Sara, and the villagers worked tirelessly to cleanse the site of Garin's dark ritual, ensuring that the ancient power of the Heartwood remained untainted. But Talia knew that the battle was far from over. The seeds of darkness had been sown, and new threats could emerge from the shadows. As Talia walked towards the village, her mind raced. The raw power she had unleashed, the power of the Heartwood coursing through her veins, was both exhilarating and terrifying. She had barely understood the extent of her abilities, let alone how to control them. Yet, she was the guardian, the protector of the forest, and with that responsibility came a heavy burden. The Heartwood was not just a source of life, it was a wellspring of ancient magic, a prize coveted by those who sought power and control. Talia knew she must remain vigilant, forever guarding the forest from those who would seek to exploit its power. Talia found Sonu sharpening his sword near the village square, his face serious as he worked. He looked up as she approached, his expression softening. "How are you holding up?" he asked, sheathing his sword. Talia sighed, sitting beside him on the stone bench. "I'm trying. It still feels surreal, you know? One moment, I'm just a girl from Pinehollow, and now I'm supposed to protect an ancient magic that I barely understand." Sonu nodded, his gaze distant. "I can't imagine what it's like for you. But you've proven yourself, Talia. You're stronger than you think." "Maybe," Talia replied, her voice low. "But it's not over, Sonu. I can feel it. The darkness isn't gone. Garin may be defeated, but something is still out there." Sonu looked at her sharply. "You're sensing something?" Talia nodded, biting her lip. "It's faint, but it's there. It feels like a shadow lurking in the back of my mind. I don't know what it is, but it feels like a warning." Sonu's face was etched with concern. "We must remain vigilant," he warned. "The darkness that Garin summoned may linger, and new threats could emerge." Just as Talia was about to respond, Sara approached them, her staff glowing faintly in the twilight. "There's something you need to see," Sara said, her voice tense. "It's about the altar." The trio made their way back to the clearing where the ancient stone altar had been located. The villagers who had been working to remove the remnants of Garin's dark magic had gathered around, murmuring in confusion and fear. Talia's heart sank as she saw what had drawn their attention. The altar, which they had believed to be neutralized, was glowing faintly with dark energy once again. "I don't understand," one of the villagers muttered. "We cleansed it. We did everything we were supposed to." Sonu knelt beside the altar, his brow furrowed as he examined the faint runes that had reappeared on its surface. "This shouldn't be possible," he muttered. "The magic we used should have completely broken the connection." Sara stepped forward, her staff glowing brighter as she extended her hand toward the altar. She closed her eyes, her face tense with concentration as she tried to sense the magic within it. After a long moment, she opened her eyes, her expression troubled. "This isn't Garin's magic," Sara said quietly. Talia's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" Sara met her gaze, her eyes filled with worry. "There's something deeper here. Something older. Garin was only using a fraction of the power this altar holds. Whatever this is, it's ancient, far older than we thought." Sonu stood, his face pale. "Then we've only scratched the surface." Talia's mind raced. If Garin had only tapped into a portion of the altar's power, then whatever lay beneath was far more dangerous than they had realized. And if the altar had begun to reactivate on its own, it meant that the true source of the darkness was still out there, waiting. "We need to leave this place," Sara said, her voice urgent. "The magic here is unstable. If we're not careful, it could release something even worse than Garin." Talia took a step back, her heart pounding. The faint glow of the altar seemed to pulse, as if it were alive, as if it were calling to something, or someone. "We have to figure out how to stop this," Sonu said, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "We can't just leave it like this." Sara shook her head. "I don't think we can stop it. Not without understanding what we're dealing with. The Heartwood's magic may not be enough this time." Talia's mind raced as she considered their options. If they couldn't stop the altar, then their only chance was to find out where the magic was coming from and how to sever the connection for good. But where would they even begin? As if sensing her thoughts, Sara turned to her, her expression serious. "There's only one place we can find the answers we need. The sacred grove." Sonu frowned. "The sacred grove? I thought that place was just a myth." Sara shook her head. "It's real. It's the source of the Heartwood's magic, the place where all life in the forest began." If there's any place that can help us understand the magic of this altar, it's the grove. Talia swallowed hard. She had heard the stories of the sacred grove, a mystical place hidden deep within the forest, where the magic of the Heartwood was said to be at its strongest. But no one had seen it in generations. It was a place of legend, shrouded in mystery. How do we find it? Talia asked. Sara hesitated. The way to the grove is dangerous. The forest itself will test us, and only those who are truly connected to the Heartwood can reach it. Talia's heart pounded in her chest. This was it, the next step in her journey. The forest had already tested her once, but now, it seemed, she would have to prove herself again. We don't have a choice, Talia said, her voice steady. We have to go. If the sacred grove is the only place that can help us, then that's where we need to be. Sonu nodded, his expression resolute. Then we leave at first light. The night was silent, the only sound was the gentle rustling of leaves. Talia stood at the edge of the village, a weight settling on her shoulders. Defeating Garin was a victory, but it was merely a battle won in a larger war. The darkness that Garin had summoned was more pervasive than they had imagined. The path to the sacred grove was fraught with danger, a perilous journey into the unknown. Yet, Talia was determined. The Heartwood had chosen her, and she would fulfill her destiny. The forest's magic flowed through her veins, a constant reminder of her connection to the ancient power. As she gazed into the darkness, a sense of resolve grew within her. With Sonu and Sara by her side, she would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The journey would be arduous, but she was ready to embrace the unknown. The fate of the forest, and perhaps the world, rested in her hands. Akumah Audiobooks. You are listening to The Forest's Last Hope. Book 3 of 7 in the Iron Rule collection. Akumah Audiobooks. Chapter 6, The Battle for the Heartwood. The journey was a grueling test of their endurance and resolve. The forest, once a familiar haven, had transformed into a labyrinth of twisted paths and hidden dangers. Every step was a challenge, every rustle of leaves a potential threat. Talia, Sonu, and Sara pressed on, their determination unwavering. The ancient magic of the forest pulsed through their veins, a constant reminder of the stakes involved. Yet, doubts crept into Talia's mind. Could they truly unlock the secrets of the sacred grove? Would it be enough to halt the spread of darkness? As they delved deeper into the heart of the forest, the air grew heavy with anticipation. The sacred grove, a place of immense power, was drawing closer. The question remained, were they ready for the challenges that awaited them? Sonu, sword drawn, led the way, his senses heightened. The forest, once familiar, now seemed alien, its depths cloaked in an eerie silence. Sara, her glowing staff held tightly, walked beside Talia, her usually calm demeanor replaced by a sense of unease. The magic, once a comforting presence, now thrummed with a raw, chaotic energy. As they delved deeper, the forest grew darker, the trees towering over them like ancient sentinels. The air was thick with anticipation, a sense of impending danger. Sara's voice, barely a whisper, broke the silence. "We're almost there," she said, her eyes fixed on the distant horizon. Talia nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. The closer they got to the sacred grove, the more intense the magic became. It was a force to be reckoned with, a power that could both heal and destroy. The question remained, would they be able to harness its power, or would it consume them? As they broke through the dense foliage, a breathtaking sight unfolded before them. The sacred grove, an ancient, majestic tree, stood at the heart of the clearing. Its bark, aglow with an ethereal light, pulsed with life. The air around it was thick with magic, a tangible force that filled Talia with both awe and fear. But amidst the beauty, a dark stain marred the scene. Dark, tendrils of energy snaked around the base of the tree, a stark contrast to its life-giving glow. The same corrupting magic that had plagued Pinehollow was here, threatening to consume the very heart of the forest. Talia's heart sank. They were too late. The dark magic had already reached the sacred grove. Sonu stepped forward, his sword drawn, his eyes scanning the area for any signs of danger. "We need to stop this," he said, his voice tense. "Before it spreads any further." Sara knelt beside the tree, her hands hovering over the dark tendrils. "This isn't just dark magic," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's ancient. It's tied to the very roots of the forest." Talia's mind raced. The dark magic was spreading through the Heartwood's very foundation, corrupting it from within. If they didn't stop it now, the entire forest, and everything connected to it, would be lost. "How do we stop it?" Talia asked, her voice tight with fear. "How do we break this connection?" Sara shook her head, her face pale. "I don't know. The magic here is too powerful. We're dealing with forces far older than any of us." Sonu clenched his fists, frustration evident on his face. "There has to be a way. We can't let this darkness destroy everything." As they debated their next move, the air around them grew colder, and the ground beneath their feet trembled. The dark tendrils that had been seeping into the earth began to rise, twisting and coiling like snakes, spreading further across the clearing. Talia's heart pounded in her chest as she watched the darkness spread, inching closer to the sacred grove. She could feel the power of the Heartwood, struggling to resist the corruption, but it was weakening. Suddenly, the ground shook violently, and the dark energy surged upward, forming a swirling vortex of black smoke. Out of the smoke, a figure emerged, a figure cloaked in shadow, its eyes glowing with an eerie, unnatural light. Talia's breath caught in her throat. This was the source of the darkness. This was the ancient force that had been corrupting the Heartwood. The figure stepped forward, its form shifting and changing, as if it were made of smoke and shadow. Its voice, when it spoke, was low and menacing, echoing through the clearing. "You are too late," it said, its tone cold and devoid of emotion. "The Heartwood's magic is mine now." Talia took a step back, her pulse racing. She could feel the weight of the figure's power, pressing down on her like a heavy blanket. It was stronger than anything she had ever faced, stronger even than Garin. Sonu stepped forward, his sword raised, his face set in determination. "We won't let you take the Heartwood," he said, his voice steady. "We'll stop you." The figure laughed, a dark, hollow sound that sent a shiver down Talia's spine. "You are foolish to think you can stand against me. The Heartwood's magic is ancient, but I am older still. I was here long before the first tree took root, and I will be here long after the last leaf falls." Talia's mind raced as she tried to think of a plan, something, anything that could stop this ancient force. But the figure's power was overwhelming, and the darkness was spreading faster now, consuming the sacred grove. Suddenly, a thought occurred to her, a memory of the battle with Garin, when the Heartwood's magic had surged through her, guiding her actions when she had felt powerless. The forest had chosen her as its guardian, and the magic that flowed through the Heartwood was not just a tool to be wielded, it was a living force, connected to every part of the land, to every living thing. Talia took a deep breath, closing her eyes as she reached deep within herself, to the connection she felt with the Heartwood. She could feel the magic pulsing beneath the ground, struggling against the darkness, but it was weak, fading. She couldn't defeat this ancient force with brute strength. She had to trust in the Heartwood, in the magic that had chosen her. Opening her eyes, Talia stepped forward, her hands outstretched toward the figure. "The Heartwood's magic doesn't belong to you," she said, her voice steady. "It belongs to the land, to the people who live here, to everything that grows in this forest. And as long as we stand together, you will never control it." The figure's eyes narrowed, its form shifting as the darkness around it surged. "You dare to challenge me, child? You are nothing compared to my power." But Talia didn't waver. She could feel the magic of the Heartwood responding to her, rising up through the ground, through the trees, through every blade of grass. The forest was with her. "I'm not alone," Talia said, her voice filled with conviction. "The Heartwood is with me. The forest is with me." As she spoke, the ground beneath her feet began to glow with a soft, green light. The trees around them swayed, their branches reaching out as if to shield her from the darkness. The magic of the Heartwood surged, stronger now, more alive. Sonu and Sara stepped forward, their hands raised as they added their strength to Talia's. The villagers who had followed them into the forest joined as well, standing in a circle around the sacred grove, their voices rising in unison as they called upon the magic of the land. The figure snarled, its shadowy form flickering as the green light spread, pushing back the darkness. "You cannot stop me," it shouted, its voice filled with fury. "I will not be defeated." But Talia knew it was already too late. The Heartwood's magic was stronger than the darkness, stronger than this ancient force. It had always been stronger, because it wasn't just a power to be controlled, it was life itself. With one final surge of energy, the green light exploded outward, enveloping the figure in a brilliant flash. The dark tendrils that had spread across the clearing dissolved, and the figure let out a final, desperate scream before disappearing into the light. When the light faded, the clearing was silent once more. The dark magic was gone, and the sacred grove stood tall and untainted, its soft glow filling the clearing with warmth. Talia collapsed to her knees, exhausted but relieved. It was over. They had saved the Heartwood. Sonu rushed to her side, his face filled with concern. "Are you all right?" Talia nodded, a tired smile on her face. "We did it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Sara knelt beside them, her eyes shining with pride. "The Heartwood choose wisely," she said softly. Talia smiled, feeling the weight of her responsibility, but also the strength that came with it. The Heartwood's magic had been tested, but it had prevailed. And as long as they stood together, the forest would remain strong. The sacred grove was safe, and the Heartwood would continue to thrive. Yet, Talia knew that this victory was just one step in a much larger journey. She felt the pulse of the forest beneath her, a reminder that her role as guardian was far from over. As they regained their composure, Sonu and Sara helped Talia to her feet. The clearing was now filled with soft, radiant light, the kind that made everything feel alive. Birds began to sing again, their melodies echoing through the trees, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves overhead, as if the forest itself was celebrating their triumph. "We need to ensure the dark magic doesn't return," Sonu said, his voice steady and focused. "We should perform a protective ritual around the grove to seal it and strengthen its defenses." Sara nodded, her expression serious. "Yes, we must reinforce the bond between the Heartwood and the villagers. They are part of its magic, and it needs their protection as much as they need it." Talia felt a rush of gratitude for her friends. They had fought together, and now, they would safeguard the Heartwood. She took a deep breath, feeling the energy of the grove flowing through her, and gathered the villagers around. "Everyone," Talia began, her voice strong. "Today, we faced a darkness that threatened not only our home but the very essence of our forest. Together, we stood against it, and together, we triumphed." The villagers nodded, their eyes filled with a mixture of pride and relief. They had come to Pinehollow in search of answers, but they had found something much more profound, a sense of community and purpose. "To protect our home and the Heartwood," Talia continued, "we must work together to create a bond that cannot be broken. We must safeguard our magic and our land, and ensure that the darkness never returns." The villagers began to murmur in agreement, and Talia could feel their energy rising, their determination uniting them in a way she had never experienced before. "Sara, Sonu, and I will lead the ritual," she said, glancing at her friends. "But we will need each of you to join in, to lend your strength to Heartwood." Sonu stepped forward, raising his sword high. "We will forge a circle of protection around the sacred grove," he declared. "Our bond will be stronger than any darkness." The villagers gathered in a circle around the ancient tree, their hands intertwined, forming a chain of unity. Talia, Sonu, and Sara positioned themselves at the center, their hands raised toward the glowing tree. Talia closed her eyes, allowing the magic of the Heartwood to flow through her, feeling the connection deepening. "Together," Talia said, her voice rising with conviction, "we call upon the Heartwood, the ancient spirit of our forest, to bless this place and protect it from all that seeks to harm it." As she spoke, the energy around them intensified, a warm light enveloping the circle. The roots of the sacred grove began to pulse with life, reaching outward as if they were responding to their call. Sara raised her staff, the light from its tip shining bright as she channeled her magic into the ground. By the bond of the Heartwood and the strength of our spirits, we seal this groove against darkness. The villagers echoed her words, their voices joining together in a powerful chant. The air crackled with energy, and Talia felt the forest respond, the magic of the Heartwood swelling in a wave of light. Sonu's sword gleamed as he held it aloft, reflecting the brilliant light surrounding them. With this bond, we stand united, now and forever. As the final words were spoken, a surge of energy erupted from the sacred grove, radiating outwards like a shockwave. The light enveloped them all, and Talia felt the magic flow through her, weaving itself into the very fabric of the forest. The dark tendrils that had once threatened to consume the grove dissolved into nothingness, banished by the combined strength of their bond. The grove glowed with renewed vigor, its power restored, stronger than before. When the light finally faded, Talia opened her eyes, breathing heavily as the weight of what they had accomplished sank in. The villagers stood, their faces illuminated with awe and pride. "It's beautiful," one villager whispered, gazing at the sacred grove. "We did it." "Yes," Talia said, her heart swelling with joy. "Together, we protected our home." But as they celebrated their victory, a shadow flickered at the edge of the grove. Talia's heart sank as she turned to look, her gut twisting with unease. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward, one Talia recognized all too well. Garin. "Did you really think it would be that easy?" Garin sneered, his face twisted with malice. "You may have won this battle, but the war is far from over." The atmosphere shifted, the joy of their triumph suddenly overshadowed by the resurgence of fear. Garin's presence felt like a chill in the air, a reminder that the darkness had not been completely vanquished. "What do you want, Garin?" Sonu demanded, stepping protectively in front of Talia and Sara. "You've already lost. You can't harm Heartwood anymore." Garin laughed, a cruel sound that echoed through the grove. "Oh, but you're mistaken, my friend. You see, the magic of the Heartwood is not as pure as you believe. It's vulnerable to those who know how to exploit it. And I know exactly how to twist it to my advantage." Talia felt a chill run down her spine as Garin raised his hands, the dark energy swirling around him like a storm. "With the Heartwood's power and the ancient forces that lie beneath, I will unleash a darkness upon this world that you cannot even begin to comprehend." "No!" Talia shouted, stepping forward defiantly. "You won't take anything from us again." With a surge of determination, Talia drew upon the magic of the Heartwood, channeling the energy she had felt during their ritual. The ground beneath her feet glowed with vibrant light as she summoned the protective forces of the forest. Garin's expression shifted to one of anger as the light clashed against the dark energy surrounding him. "You think you can stop me," he spat, his voice rising in rage. "You are nothing." But Talia stood her ground, feeling the support of her friends and the villagers behind her. "We are not nothing," she declared. "We are the Heartwood's guardians, and we will protect it." Sonu stepped beside her, sword drawn, his eyes blazing with conviction. "Together, Garin, we will defeat you once and for all." Sara raised her staff, calling upon the energy of the grove. "We will not allow darkness to prevail. Not here, not anywhere." With a collective shout, Talia, Sonu, and Sara focused their magic, directing it toward Garin. The light surged forward, a brilliant wave of energy that clashed against the dark storm surrounding him. Garin howled in fury as the light struck him, the force of it pushing him back. "You think this is enough? You are only delaying the inevitable." As the battle raged on, Talia could feel the Heartwood's magic responding to their call, growing stronger with every moment. It was as if the very essence of the forest was joining the fight, lending its strength to the guardians. "Fight with us, Heartwood," Talia cried, pouring her heart and soul into the magic she wielded. "Protect this land." The ground beneath them shook as the Heartwood's energy pulsed, a living force rising to meet the darkness. The light expanded, filling the clearing with a blinding brilliance, pushing back against Garin's dark power. "No. This cannot be." Garin screamed, panic creeping into his voice as he struggled against the overwhelming force. Talia felt a surge of hope. They could do this. They could defeat him once and for all. As the light enveloped Garin, the shadows around him began to disintegrate, fading away like smoke in the wind. The ancient magic of the Heartwood, combined with their unwavering determination, was too powerful for him to withstand. Together, Talia shouted, urging her friends and the villagers to channel their strength into the final push. For the Heartwood. For Pinehollow. With one last surge of energy, they released their magic, the light bursting forth like a supernova. It engulfed Garin entirely, a radiant force that consumed the darkness, banishing it from the grove. As the light receded, Talia fell to her knees, breathless but victorious. Garin was gone, and the dark magic that had threatened the Heartwood was no more. The air around them was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers, the forest rejuvenated and alive once more. The villagers erupted into cheers, their voices filled with relief and joy. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger than ever. Talia looked around, her heart swelling with gratitude and pride. They had done this together. Sonu knelt beside her, a wide grin on his face. We did it, Talia. We really did it. Sara, still holding her staff, nodded enthusiastically. The Heartwood is safe, and so are we. Akumah Audiobooks. You are listening to The Forest's Last Hope. Book 3 of 7 in the Iron Rule collection. Akumah Audiobooks. Chapter 7, Guardians of a New Dawn. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden glow over the sacred grove. The air buzzed with the vibrant energy of life, the once dark tendrils of magic now replaced by a soft, warm light that flowed through the trees and danced in the leaves. Talia, Sonu, and Sara stood at the heart of the grove, their hearts filled with a mix of relief and gratitude. Talia took a deep breath, inhaling the sweet scent of blooming flowers and freshly turned earth. The battle against Garin had been intense, but they had triumphed together, solidifying their bond not only as friends but as protectors of the Heartwood. The villagers who had gathered to support them began to disperse, their faces radiant with joy and relief. They had reclaimed their home, and now they could return to their lives, safe in the knowledge that they had contributed to the protection of their beloved forest. As the last of the villagers made their way back toward Pinehollow, Talia turned to Sonu and Sara. We should take a moment to reflect on everything that's happened, she suggested, her voice calm but filled with emotion. The Heartwood's magic has connected us all in ways we never expected. Sonu nodded, leaning against the ancient tree, its bark glowing softly in the twilight. It's incredible to think how far we've come. We started this journey as individuals, each with our own fears and doubts, but now we're united as guardians. Sara smiled, her eyes sparkling with warmth. And the Heartwood has chosen us for a reason. We have a responsibility to protect it, not just from darkness, but to nurture the magic that binds us all to this land. Talia's heart swelled with pride. They had faced the darkness and prevailed, but it was more than that. They had discovered their own strengths, learned to work together, and forged a connection that would last a lifetime. But what happens now? Talia asked, her brow furrowing slightly. We've defeated Garin, but how do we ensure that this darkness doesn't return? Sonu straightened, his expression serious. We need to establish a council of guardians, people from the village who can help maintain the balance of magic in Pinehollow and the surrounding lands. We can train others to protect the Heartwood and understand the magic that flows through it. Sara nodded in agreement. We should also create a way to pass on our knowledge. The Heartwood's magic is powerful, but it can also be dangerous if misused. We need to educate the villagers on how to respect it and protect it. Talia felt a sense of determination wash over her. Then let's do it. Let's bring the village together, share our experiences, and make sure everyone understands the importance of the Heartwood. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the three friends began to outline their plans. They would hold gatherings to share their stories, teach the villagers about the magic of the Heartwood, and emphasize the importance of unity in the face of adversity. In the following weeks, the village transformed. The sacred grove became a place of learning and community. Villagers gathered to hear stories of their triumph, share their experiences, and understand the magic that flowed through their land. They formed a council of guardians, bringing together the wisest and bravest among them to help protect and nurture the Heartwood. Talia took her role seriously. With Sonu and Sara by her side, she led training sessions in the grove, teaching the villagers how to harness their own magic and connect with the Heartwood. She showed them how to cultivate the land, plant new trees, and care for the flora that thrived in their forest. Each lesson strengthened the bond between the villagers and the magic of the Heartwood. As the seasons changed, so did the village. The once quiet hamlet of Pinehollow buzzed with activity and excitement. Festivals were held in honor of the Heartwood, celebrating the magic that flowed through their land and the unity that had grown among them. The villagers sang songs, danced under the stars, and shared stories around the fire, their laughter echoing through the trees. Talia often returned to the sacred grove, where the ancient tree stood tall, its bark shimmering with life. She felt a deep connection to it, knowing that it had chosen her as its guardian. She would spend hours sitting at its base, meditating and reflecting on her journey, feeling the pulse of magic beneath her. One evening, as she sat in the grove, she sensed a familiar presence beside her. Sonu joined her, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Do you ever wonder what lies beyond Pinehollow?" he asked, his voice low. Talia looked at him, curious. "What do you mean?" "I mean, there's a whole world out there filled with magic and adventure. We've only just begun to understand our powers and the magic of the Heartwood. What if there are other places in danger, other guardians who need our help?" Sara appeared, joining their conversation. "It's true. The Heartwood connects us all, and our magic is not limited to this forest. We could explore beyond Pinehollow, seek out others who share our bond with the land, and help them protect their magic." Talia felt a spark of excitement at the idea. "You're right. There's so much more to discover. But we need to make sure that Pinehollow is strong enough to stand on its own before we leave." Sonu nodded. "And we will. We'll establish the council, strengthen the village's defenses, and ensure that everyone understands the importance of the Heartwood." The three friends spent the following months preparing for their future adventures. They expanded their training, focusing on developing their own abilities while also teaching others. They forged alliances with neighboring villages, spreading knowledge of the Heartwood and its magic. As the Council of Guardians grew stronger, so did the bonds between the villages. Talia felt a sense of purpose as they united against any potential threats, standing watch over the land they loved. The Heartwood pulsed with vitality, its magic flowing freely, a testament to their efforts. Finally, after much preparation, the time came for Talia, Sonu, and Sara to embark on their journey. Standing at the edge of Pinehollow, the sun rising behind them, they turned to look at the village they had fought to protect. "We've come so far," Talia said, her heart filled with both excitement and a tinge of sadness. "I'll miss this place." Sonu placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll always carry Pinehollow with us, no matter where we go. And we'll come back to share our adventures, to show everyone what we've learned." Sara smiled, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. "And who knows? Maybe we'll discover new magic, new allies, and even greater threats. We're guardians of the Heartwood now, and our journey is just beginning." With that, they set off into the unknown, the magic of the Heartwood guiding their path. As they left Pinehollow behind, Talia felt a surge of hope and excitement. They would face whatever challenges lay ahead together, united by their purpose and their bond with the Heartwood. Akumah Audiobooks. You have reached to the end of the chapter. Click Next, and continue listening to The Forest's Last Hope. This story consists of 7 chapters as such 7 videos. Consider subscribing for more epic tales by Akumah Audiobooks, and refer to channel playlist for better experience. Have a nice day.